My sister was very sickly growing up, and every week she'd have a remix of last week's illness waging war on her immune system, and I thought it was a major flex that I had the immune system of steel and never got sick. Ha! Imagine getting folded by the commonest cold. I could never. I've genuinely been fit and well most of my life, but after returning from a trip abroad with my family, things started to slowly go wrong until my life insurance decided to skydive into a volcano. So here's the story of the time a serious illness almost unalived me, and the tale of the worst hospital experience I have ever had in my life. Though I don't have much to compare it to since I've only been in hospital one other time, but that's a story for another video, baby! It all started back in 2017, and I was soon to start my first day of sixth form at school. For the last few days, I noticed I had a really stiff neck, and it was so painful. No, wait, but at the same time, I didn't think much of it and figured I just slept awkwardly. The first day of the new school year rolled around, and your girl had a pretty rough night's sleep, waking up drenched in sweat and my head was killing me. But my dumbass ignored the fact I was shaking like a twerking leaf in the wind and dragged myself to school anyway. Throughout the day, I couldn't focus. The lights were making my eyes and my head hurt, and I was so cold, even though my clothes were soaked in sweat. Afternoon classes started, and I was looking rough. I was sitting at my seat, astral projecting and reconsidering my life choices, when my bestie Des took one look at my dying ass and carried me to the nurse's office before I passed out. Turns out I had a teensy, tiny little fever of 38.9C. The nurse legally had to yeet my ass home, but I only had one class left and my parents were busy at work, so my dumbass decided to park my ass in math class and try to survive until the end of the day. Guess Ray took one for the team. A+ for everyone! Yippee! I got home, threw up all night, and had to miss school the following day. Surprise, surprise. Mom took me to the doctor, who said it was likely to just be the flu, and after a week of rest, I'd be hunky-dory Gucci-Wucci. And I figured he was right. Just a bad case of the flu, and I'd bounce back soon enough. Right? Right? As the hours went on, I was becoming unable to tolerate light. It was burning my eyes and making my head feel like it was splitting open. So I became a vampire and kept the curtains drawn all day. I couldn't keep food down anymore, and I was so cold despite sweating uncontrollably. That night, my parents walked in to find me sitting up, staring at the wall, shaking and unresponsive to anything they said. Dad took my temperature and panic settled in when they saw the reading, 39.9C. Oh shit, this girl is dead, girl. We gotta get this bitch to a hospital stat. They tried to get me out of bed, but it was like my dang brain had been severed from my body and could no longer control it. The feeling was wild and terrifying. It was like I was trapped in my own body. My dad picked me up and bolted to the car, rushing me to the nearest ER. From this moment on, it was a race against time. As soon as we entered the hospital, I was put in a wheelchair and raced into an examination room. My fever had hit close to 40C and my blood pressure was dropping, so I was put on emergency antibiotics with 2 IVs put into both of my arms. At this point, I had gone full zombie mode on everyone. I couldn't walk or talk, just making groaning noises like your best buddies in Minecraft. The next thing I remember is being wheeled into another room where they were taking some scans of my head. The doctor returned to my parents, explaining that I had contracted meningitis, a serious infection that can become fatal quickly. Alright, it's time for Hyrea's medic moment. Excuse me for nerding out for a sec, but at the end of the day, I am a student doctor. Meningitis is a dangerous infection of the meninges, which are the protective sacs that surround your brain and spinal cord. There are 2 main types. The first is viral, caused by viruses, and isn't that severe? You can usually get better at home with lots of rest and meds. The other type is bacterial, caused by bacteria, and can be deadly if not treated fast enough. And guess which one your girl managed to catch? If you didn't get any of that, let me dumb it down. Brain in sac infected, death. I was rushed into the ICU, or intensive care unit, where I had blood taken every hour to monitor the infection. Fun fact, one of my doctor's tests for an infection with a blood test is looking at the number of white blood cells you have. The higher they are, the more severe the infection, generally. The normal range is about 4.5 to 11 in normal healthy people. Want to know what mine was? 150. Yeah, your girl was really going through it. I wasn't allowed visitors since bacterial meningitis is contagious, so I was left all alone in a dark hospital room with nothing but the sound of voices behind the closed door and the beeping of a heart monitor. At this point, I was blindfolded because I was literally screaming in pain due to any source of light. This is called photophobia, a key symptom of meningitis. And just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, they did. In order to determine the best form of treatment, the doctors needed to perform a lumbar puncture to see what type of bacteria was causing my infection. This is where they stick the biggest fucking needle I have seen in my entire life into my spine to get some brain juice, which was pretty much bacteria soup at this point, so they can look at it under a microscope. The best part is, the doctor did the procedure wrong! Luckily, my dad was allowed in the room because I was a minor at the time and so out of it that I couldn't consent to the procedure on my own. Instead of having me lay on my side in the fetal position, which you should do, this sucker really had me sit on the edge of the bed and lean forward, which I could barely do on my own since I had no strength to even breathe on my own. Sucker didn't even give me a warning before shanking me with the foot-long needle without any anesthesia and oopsie, missed the spot, here we go again. Woo! He missed the right spot the first time and proceeded to take the needle out and then stick it into my back over and over again, and all I remember was pain and bawling my damn eyes out. My dad was about to kill a man and threatened to bust this guy's kneecaps if he didn't bring the anesthesia at that second. The reason he didn't bring it in the first place was apparently because it would take another 10 minutes to get. You freaking buffoon! Sucker skedaddled away and eventually they were able to get the brain juice. Worst part about a lumbar puncture, aside from the needle, you gotta lay down flat on your back for 8 hours and do nothing. Nada. I just lay there contemplating my life choices and wondering why I was even born. Mom was eventually allowed to visit, and while she was in my room, she got an email from my school. It was my chemistry teacher sending me the dang worksheets I'd missed for homework. Like, bitch, I'm out here dying in the hospital and you have the audacity to say, here's the worksheets you missed out on, ooh. Anyways, I kept throwing up all over the place and one time was super embarrassing. The nurse was taking blood from me again and I swear to God, I had barely any left. And as soon as the needle touched my skin, I threw up all over her. Yikes. To shame this hospital even more, one time there was a friggin' air bubble in my IV. And if you didn't know, those are super dangerous and should be removed before the IV is even inserted. My dad was fuming and pointed it out to the nurses who quickly fixed the issue. Even so, it shouldn't have been there in the first place. I know these things, medic brain you see. After weeks of marinating in the bacteria soup of my ICU room, I was finally well enough to be discharged from the hospital. Yippee! I was changing out of my hospital gown into my comfy clothes, and I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror. I was still pale and gaunt, having lost a lot of weight while being sick, but at least I was alive so I'd have to worry about my deep cavernous eye bags another time. I was on hospital leave from school for another 2 weeks to gain back my strength and continue my recovery at home. It was a slow and painful process, but the worst part? Yeah, it gets worse somehow. The second I returned to school, it was assessment week, where we had several tests in every subject. And remember, I had only gone to school for 1 day, barely, and had been off for weeks, going on months. My brain was crispy fried to the point I could barely do my ABCs. They had me sit in the exams regardless somehow. I flopped all of those tests, bro. It was major ass. Because the infection wasn't treated sooner, I now have permanent nerve damage, but it isn't severe and I'm still lucky to be able to do everything I love. I just get the tingles in my hands and feet and stuff. Should we have probably sued the hospital? Probably. But I was just happy to be alive and didn't want anything more to do with hospitals. I hate hospital environments now, and that probably sounds ridiculous for someone who's gonna be a doctor in 2 years, but as they say, it is what it is. So, that was the story of the time I almost ascended to the heavens, but somehow managed to survive. I've been constantly sick ever since, calmer as a bitch, the end.